Hello everyone, I hope that you've had a good morning and managed to grab a coffee, as you'll definitely want to be awake for this panel. I'm Paul Nasse, Managing Director for Northern Europe at IAS. We've gone through a number of different topics this morning, so now we're going to take some time to talk with three major agencies and get their opinion and feedback about this year's situation, how it impacted their communications, their marketing strategy and their investments. Did they go back to normal in September? Are there still challenges, and what does this look like for the rest of the year? And to address these topics, I'm really pleased to be joined by three fantastic speakers who I'll let introduce themselves to you now. And based on the boxes on my screen, Helen, you're first up, so if you didn't mind introducing yourself and maybe passing to Chris, if you can go clockwise, that'd be much appreciated, please.
Sure. Hi, I'm Helen Price, and I lead our accountability practice within Magna at IPG Mediabrands. Christian?
Christian, we can't hear you. I don't know if you're on mute at all or...
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Lucky me. I'm digital, so I had to turn on my mic, yeah. Hi, my name is Christian. I'm Chief Digital Officer of Mediacom in Germany. I'm responsible for digital in terms of strategy, data-driven advertising, programmatic, and operations.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Helen Beanland. I'm Digital Operations Global Director at Dentsu Media, working on a range of global clients on looking after their operational and data processes.
Great, thank you, and thanks for getting involved. I realise we're busy and it's unusual times, so I really appreciate you taking the time out to speak to us and to speak to the audience as well. So let's start with a question about your advertising during the early stages of this pandemic. It seems like everybody's been talking about it for a long time now. There has been and still is a lot of content about COVID-19 in the market, taking up most of the news. It doesn't look like it's going to be going anywhere anytime soon. With many articles generating anxiety, I guess just to open up, how did your agency first react to the pandemic, and what are you doing now to react to it? So anybody want to take that one as an opening starter?
Yeah, happy to take that one. I think that's a really good question. It's also really very relevant. And I think, like you say, we're really used to hearing about COVID-19 now, but actually, if you go back 6 months, it felt like it happened very quickly. So at the start of the year, I think there was a period of very rapid sort of reaction and adjustment. Because again, like I say, news content has always been a very tricky area for brands. There's always a lot of sensitivity about appearing in the right context, but at the same time making sure you're not avoiding premium content as a consequence. And there was no different in this case with COVID-19, but it was further amplified because at the same time we just saw this huge increase in the actual consumption of news as well. So, as agencies, we're obviously huge supporters of quality journalism, and of course, premium news publications are vitally important. So, and particularly in the current environment. So, yeah, we did a lot of work to make recommendations to our clients to how to achieve that balance, and we worked with the likes of yourselves and companies such as NewsGuard in the UK to make sure that we could. We didn't need to avoid coronavirus as like a keyword, but we could still ensure that that brands weren't appearing in places that were harmful to their brand. And that's ongoing, and I think it's still really relevant. Though I do feel like there's been a shift in perception towards news and content around that. And I saw there's an IAS survey in the US, I think, out today, which was saying that actually sentiment towards advertising being in news content is actually a lot more positive than it has been previously.
Great. Hannah, Christian, anything to add to that?
Yeah, so I think looking at your IAB point, something that the IAB did last year was they ran an event for a day looking at that exact thing, like looking at sentiment in news and whether advertising next to kind of bad articles and good articles, whether there was a difference. And I definitely think our brands at the beginning 6 months ago were a bit scared about that and thinking that anything to do with COVID was awful and we shouldn't be anywhere near it. But then obviously their reach was completely decimated. So there had to be a conversation about what that sentiment was and whether it was good to be next to articles. There's some really good news stories and was it Colonel Tom? Everyone talked about him for like, I just remember hearing about him for weeks and weeks and weeks. Like that was a great news story, wasn't it? And so being associated with that content could only be a good thing. So it was just an education piece, I think, at the beginning. And then once everyone got a bit more comfortable, and I think that's the same with everything, isn't it, about COVID? Once we became a bit more like akin to our surroundings, everyone started to realise that it was actually kind of business as usual, and we could do the same things we were doing before. It just needed an adjustment.
Absolutely. And we talked a lot about back when this pandemic started, how the virus had no boundaries, and I guess ad tech and the pressures on media has no boundaries either. So Christian, from a sort of German marketplace perspective, did you face similar challenges with supporting news and premium publishers as well?
Well, there is a broad variety of very good, high quality news websites in the German marketplace, and I mean, you've heard it before. Helen said it, Hannah said it. I think quality is one of our major priorities anyway. So I think independent from COVID, what we're facing is that in parts of our ecosystem and digital publishing sites, we're not even able to control where ads are shown. So everything in your news feed, on social platforms, hate speech. So I think that's a much bigger problem than just because of news during COVID crisis. And getting back control on those placements is kind of a much bigger challenge for the industry, and should be forced to get back control.
Absolutely. Just you mentioned the IAB research, Hannah. Just a shameless plug from IAS. We released an ad adjacency coronavirus research piece that talked a lot about this particular topic and referenced that over 90% of consumers preferred to read coronavirus on content in premium and recognized news sites. So, you know, I think people felt sensitive to this issue anyway, but they felt much more confident and comfortable when dealing with premium news, despite, you know, some of the tragic stories that were taking place. So, yeah, slight shameless plug on the part of IAS. So shifting from the planning processes and considerations that you had, and talking a bit more about consumers in general, did the work from home kind of trend impact your media investment in terms of where you were likely to spend and follow that consumer? So, you know, following the likes of CTV or video streaming, possibly even social. Did you see a shift in that investment strategy at all? And maybe Christian, you could open up with this one, please.
Yeah. So first of all, I think COVID massively impacted media channels like cinema, out of home, etc. So that was kind of the first level when we had the lockdown in Germany mid-end of March. So that was the biggest impact that we had. And yes, we did see some shifts in terms of work from home, remote work, mainly because TV usage went up, prices stayed the same. So gaining efficiencies from classic TV channels, but just in the short term, because TV stations were very quick and fast to increase pricing. So that was just a small period of time. We saw some efficiency gains in search and social due to less demand and higher usage of those platforms. But now I think it's kind of the usual level of engagement from user side and usage of media channels. So it was just a small period of time. Bigger impact, as I said, COVID overall, and especially for industries that were massively impacted by COVID and the lockdown. So travel industry as an example. So those clients have been hit very hard, and that's where we've seen massive shifts. Yes, or budget cuts.
Okay. How about Dentsu and IPG?
Yeah,
yeah.
I think we
Good.
Sorry, I think I'd agree. We saw a sudden shift because of, you know, the environment and maybe people advertisers suddenly having to pull budgets, and I think there's been an acceleration into some parts, so into usage of e-commerce and digital search, social channels. But I agree with Christian. We're seeing a more return to sort of normal, if that's the right word, levels now. So it'll be interesting to see if some of those reactions to the environment at the time kind of continue to play out into 2021 and they're here to stay, or people will just go back to their previous spending pattern.
Okay. Hannah, did you have anything to add? So you kind of talked across each other, so I didn't know if you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, sorry. That's the problem with video calls, isn't it? And not being on a panel and not being able to interrupt people. Yeah, I think as both Helen and Christian said, it has been different. I think a social media boycott that happened in amongst the COVID problems too, I think that definitely contributed to how budgets are moving around. And like with YouTube, we saw a few years ago where people stopped spending on YouTube for a few months because of, you know, the things that happened there. So I think the environments and that bit hasn't changed. It's just happened at the same time as COVID. So it's made our jobs a bit more difficult, where we've kind of had bigger budgets to spend in some places than normal, and maybe they've condensed in other places. So I think definitely for us, the sort of testing and learning, it's been definitely like elevated beyond a complete, I don't know how to describe it, but hugely, where instead of spending money on social platforms, maybe that money's been spent in display, but in a slightly different way, because we're going to test this environment. So instead of testing maybe once or twice, we're testing in 3 or 4 different ways. And so because of the better content we're getting in other places, we're able to test in different ways. And I think it's just been a very busy time for everybody. But like the working from home habits has kind of, I think we're all going to be in it for the next 6 months or so, aren't we? So I feel like the budgets are going to change again, and we're going to be doing more testing and learning. And maybe, I don't know, the elections next month, aren't they, in the US? So that's going to obviously contribute to how we look at social again. So I just think we're doing a lot more testing. It's just a lot more testing and learning.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And Hannah, to that point, have you seen an increased demand and I guess a reliance around technology and measurement and the data that comes from it? You talk a little bit about testing in, you know, uncertain times and the times we find ourselves in. Has that increased your demand and reliance on technology and data at this moment in time?
Yeah, definitely. I think using vendors like yourselves, instead of just looking at the data and saying, oh yeah, I've ticked that box and I've done it, there's been a much more, like, we've looked at all of the data that's come from those vendors and said, okay, well, maybe this isn't brand suitable, but it's brand safe and it's fraud free, it's viewable. Like, how do we use that data and how do we interrogate it more, and how do we increase against our benchmarks, and how do we make sure it's working as hard as it can do? So as budgets are being squeezed, those data points are becoming really, really important, and making sure they're correct as well, just to make sure that we're evaluating everything and we're using all of the technologies that we're already paying for, because a lot of people have got these technologies in place. It's just we've had, you know, they've just been sitting there, and obviously we all look at them, absolutely, and we're all optimizing, but actually looking at them more and trying to get more value out of what we've got in place at the moment.
Got it. Christian, Helen, anything to add to that? Is measurement more important or less important for you guys at the moment?
I'd say more, definitely. I think to Hannah's point, that particularly when budgets get stretched, and like, you know, this is the world I work in every day talking to clients, so they want to be sure they're getting the most out of every, you know, dollar they're spending. And absolutely, and I think as well, to the earlier point, with the heightened kind of focus on sort of brand suitability and safety, they really want to make sure they've got the measures in place to understand a lot more about where their advertising sits. And then again, as Hannah says, just make sure they're measuring the right things.
From an industry perspective, I think we're pretty advanced in measuring digital media channels in their silos. So where there is a lack of is if you go cross-platform or into the walled gardens, we're more a closed shop. And what we're looking in the German marketplace is even more to measure reach across TV, AV, online video, connected TV, and that's the biggest challenge for our clients and in our industry at the moment. I think especially within digital, we're pretty far ahead. But when I look at the cross-platform reach measurements, that's something that we definitely have to work on. And publishers.
Yeah, I think, like, to your point, like, using, like we do at the moment, definitely adults territory, but like using taxonomies to like look at your data and interrogate it. I've definitely had conversations in the last few months a lot more about how we can use that across our offline platforms, so we can kind of tie those data sets all together, because at the moment it's kind of, okay, we did some TV here and it was great, but actually putting a name against it and using a taxonomy where we can link it back to what we've done in digital has been, yeah, I've definitely been much more involved in those conversations than I have been in the last 2 years.
Okay, and I guess it's a somewhat tenuous link to the other sort of big topic of what felt like the start of this year was this sort of death of the third-party cookie narrative that came through. And I appreciate it's probably slowed down in recent months because we've all had lots of other things and more important things to worry about than a cookie on somebody's laptop or device. But it's coming, it's getting closer. Obviously, we've got probably just over 18 months or 18 months of Google Chrome left to run. Do you believe that contextual targeting as a tool will become more important in a world whereby third-party cookies will limit our ability to target? And then, Christian, maybe I could start off with you on that one, please.
Sure. Yeah, well, let me start. I think there is this famous quote of, I think we never had more kind of legalized data collection after GDPR than ever before. I think all those small boxes, yes, except cookies. I think we've never been in a position where cookie collection has been as high as now. So for us, as an industry, the bigger challenge will definitely be e-privacy coming up, and as you said, Chrome blocking cookies end of next year. And we've seen that with Firefox already, where cookie rates have significantly dropped. So that's going to be definitely a challenge for everything that is cookie based. But what we've seen over the past month is that first, contextual is becoming more and more relevant. Definitely. So, and the environment of an ad placement always was important. But I think there will be and there needs to be even more. So, especially building up first-party capabilities for clients is a very relevant topic, and ID-based solutions, but saying that outside the Googles and Facebook, because I mean they're a threat for the whole industry in terms of data-driven advertising, if they block it and do not allow third-party cookies or alternative solutions, and to make advertising more efficient and not as it was 10 years ago when we dropped cookies at everyone. I think that's not in the interest of Google and Facebook and all the others as well. So there definitely needs to be other solutions like contextual, like ID-based targeting, or first party.
Right. And Hannah, I guess in your operational role, you get asked these sorts of questions quite regularly from clients. How do you tend to tackle them? Do you try and tackle them head on, or do you sort of try and sit back and provide a more sort of balanced argument as time develops?
Well, yeah, try and balance the argument as much as possible. I think that there's, however much you read or however many conferences or panels that you sit on and you listen to, there's always so much more to learn. And I think as long as the client knows that you're learning as much as you can, then that's the best we can do. I think that in terms of cookies, I do remember that there was cookies that, was it like they had 5 years on them or something? Like it was those really, really long cookies that we used to have when we had ad networks like 10, 15 years ago. And yeah, you're right, we never want to go back to that. But that first party data piece is really important. A lot of our brand clients haven't got that piece. And so, well, they do have that piece, but it's not as extensive as maybe the publishers have got it and are used to. And being an ex-publisher myself, I know how much data we used to catch on our first party users, and moving to agency side, I was so surprised that we didn't have the same expanse of knowledge open to us. So yeah, there's just a bit of catch up, I think, on both sides.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Do you still, as an agency group, as a brand that you're representing, have data privacy concerns 2 years on from GDPR and the noise that we all made, I think, collectively at the time?
Yeah, so I think like most agencies, we have a specific team which are just tasked to deal with that exact question. I think obviously with us leaving Europe at the end of December, that might cause some complications, but it was always my understanding that we would have a directive that would mirror what was in Europe. And so I'm hopeful that it would be the same thing. No one wants to see what's happening, obviously, in the US whenever they see. I remember doing a screen share with my colleague a few months ago, and he's like, what are all these boxes? Why are you ticking everything? It's like, yeah, they just don't have that same level that we do of asking people what their opinions are. So, yeah, we don't want that. Let's not have that.
Helen, Christian, anything to add on the GDPR point? Is it still a hot topic inside your agencies?
I think, as Hannah says, it's been a hot topic for quite some time now, and like, yeah, we've all got teams and reams of specialists in place to deal with it, and it's not going to go away. And I think there can only be more regulation in the future. So, like you say, in the US, it's a bit less regulated, but then it is in pockets, and I think it's coming. So it's something we're probably quite well prepared for, but then again, it changes all the time, and it's such a evolving space. But
yeah, and when you look at the agencies, I think we're pretty well prepared for GDPR because we really started early to look at this. But when you look at things like TCF 2.0 now, I get the impression that, and there's no publisher on this panel, so bear with me, but I think especially on publishers' side, that's TCF 2.0. That's like, hey, it comes out of nowhere for them, and yeah, not all of them are pretty well equipped and prepared to collect cookies in a good and legal way at the moment, recommended by IB. So it's kind of I think that's the biggest challenge for publishers at the moment. I think on agency side, this is where we're prepared for GDPR and also moving forward to e-privacy.
Yeah, okay. And talking sort of cookies, talking GDPR and data in general, given what's happened this year, do you feel that you've changed your sort of wider strategy as an agency in the last 6 to 12 months? And maybe, Christian, we could start with you. Talk a little bit about how consumers are changing their behaviour. Has that led to you changing your strategy at all? Or is it very much on a case-by-case basis as per the client you're dealing with?
Well, it's on a client by client base and case by case. So we as an agency haven't changed our strategy. I think towards communication strategy. I think what's changed in terms of strategy is how we take care of our employees. How do we deal with the new situation of remote working? Some teams already used remote work intensively, others not. So how do we deal with that? I was pretty surprised how fast we adopted that. But as an agency, in terms of agency strategy, I think there are still the same rules for successful communication. And yes, placements change, publishers change, but I think we're also used to those changes as an industry pretty good, and as an agency. That's kind of our daily job.
It feels like there's always a hurdle or hoop to jump through from somewhere or some angle. So I guess, you know, that's what makes this industry so great, is the ability to be fluid and dynamic and adjust to whatever's put in front of us. And I think, you know, I used to work in an agency. I think agencies have been very good at doing that for a long time. So, you know, the pandemic itself should only be a catalyst for change, but hopefully for good in the long run, I believe.
I mean, that's what clients are asking for. That's to guide them through changing usage to different media behaviors over the years. So I think that's really, we're pretty good as that as an agency, I would guess.
And do you feel, and this is again a question to the group, do you feel that, going not off topic but slightly to one side, do you feel that clients have become more patient in understanding change as well, or do you think that pace of change is being demanded faster and faster as the sort of the years moved on?
I think they're definitely embracing change, and I'd agree with the faster and faster. I think particularly, obviously, the events of this year meant everyone had to react really quickly to things, as you know, Christian was saying earlier. Suddenly some of our clients, you know, their business was really massively disrupted. So I think the sort of pace of change has accelerated. Again, as agencies, we've always been good at kind of guiding our clients and adapting to that change and trying to keep them ahead of it. But I think this year in particular, it's been much more rapid, and I think it's flexibility they need the most. They need to be certain that they can change a lot more faster when they need to, and we can be really reactionary when we have to be, and react really quickly and in the right way to events in the world.
Okay, so leading on from that, and I guess I'll start with you, Helen. So which areas of your business and advertising in general do you feel still requires improvement, and that could be through efficiencies or savings? And I guess an example would be programmatic. We as a business in programmatic continue to grow across this year. Caught us a little bit by surprise at the speed of that change, actually. So what do you see as sort of changes inside your business, and is that sort of financially led, or is that time-based?
I think it's probably time-based, actually. I think from my perspective, and it echoes actually a point Hannah made earlier about the data and the automation and the reporting. So I think there's a big job to be done still in getting all this data that clients all want to see and own in a lot of cases, and want to be able to use to inform their decisions, and being able to get the right data to them in the right way so they can understand it, so they can use it, so we can all work off the same metrics. And there's a lot of it. So I think probably a big focus will be around sort of getting better at that and getting more automated and be able to kind of serve that to them really swiftly and in the right way. So we can all be more efficient with our time. I think there's one thing we've all learned, especially from working from home, is we seem to have less time than we did before, even without the commute in the morning. So I'd say that was probably the sort of a big focus. It has been for a while, but I think that will accelerate.
Yeah, I'd like to, definitely second that. Like, definitely I suppose my whole job is operational processes and data flows, and so quite often I'm brought in when a client's data flow is not quite as flowing as it should be, or maybe their processes aren't quite as aligned globally as they should be. So the clients I've worked on, I suppose recently, have already had that, and it's been great. But it is a case of, like you say, Helen, like too much data and not too sure which, there's too many metrics to use almost, and it's all in a data lake, but we're not too sure what we're going to do with it. And people have got years and years worth of data now, so for our teams that's great to analyze. I suppose my job as an operations person is making sure that the data we create is useful and meaningful, and so the part on the other side of it where you're actually interpreting it and using it, that's for someone else to do. For me, it's the case of making sure that we're creating good data so it is actually actionable at the end.
Yeah, that's so true, that there is so much, and not all of it is useful. It's so it's like cutting through to really get to the core metrics that people can properly use and make things better and inform decisions.
And I think we're never going to be finished with that. I mean, operational process efficiency, I think there will never be a situation where we say, hey, that's the optimal, most efficient process, because then something new pops up, new data sources or whatever. So I think it's kind of a never-ending story.
I guess that's what keeps
us all interested.
Good news for Hannah.
Like ad servers have been the same for years. Like, they haven't changed that bit of technology, and the vendors that Paul you work for, they haven't changed in their core offering. They are the same bits of technology. Obviously they've been enhanced, but yeah, you're right. Like, we're never going to be out of a job, are we? I mean, operations is totally key at the moment, and hopefully, I suppose it will, like you say, it gets faster and faster, isn't it? So it's that automation that's really important.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that we're not going to be coming to you guys anytime soon saying we're giving you less data. I think getting that data at the right time in the right place is just as important, and probably requires more focus, I think, moving forward as well. So to that point, Hannah, what steps are you taking to future-proof your business? And I realise that you're sort of, very much in the operational side of things. What do you see as future-proofing tactics for yourself at Dentsu?
So I think key to that is consolidation. So working with partners that can actually do the job they're meant to do. So consolidating your tech as much as you can, and then using specific tech on the different pieces within your puzzle. So there isn't a simple one size fits all, and definitely when you're in a global market, maybe you can't quite use the same partners in Russia or China that you can do in Australia and New Zealand. So just thinking more about, I suppose, just optimizing what you've got in place and trying to make it work as best it can. Like, it's a really hard question, but future proofing, like you said, I think we don't know what's going to happen next year and the year after, but the technologies that I've been using for years, like ad servers, they really haven't changed much in the last year, but in some cases we're using 20, we should only be using 1. So that's like a massive easy win. So doing small change, people see them as small changes. Ad server consolidation is not a small project, but it's a really quick win if you can just put it all into one place and just get one data feed instead of 20. So yeah.
And how do vendors like ourselves and others help you with that, or is it something that you very much need to own yourselves?
So I think, I suppose, because I used to be in the space you're in and understand how the technologies work, for me it's really important that we use the right technology for the right place. Like maybe YouTube is a different environment and maybe someone different needs to go there. Out of home is something totally different and we need a different technology there too. So it's just making sure we've got the right person or the right, and like we were saying earlier about getting the right data in the right place. That's really important. So I suppose the best thing that you as a vendor can do to help us is, you know, if we've got 20 contracts with IAS across 20 markets, like that's not helpful for anyone. So just helping us to consolidate on your side and then making sure that we are operating like a global business and we have, you know, you're a global business too. We should just have that one link instead of those 20 links or 30, or yeah, it's a lot cleaner just to have that one link between the vendor and the business.
Helen, Christian, anything to add to that? So how are you future-proofing your businesses at the moment? Is it around the similar theme of data and driving efficiencies through it?
Well, I think there are two kind of directions. One is global clients trying to consolidate and being more efficient in terms of infrastructure that they're using. And on the other hand, what we see is a more customized approach. The more local you get, the more specific needs you have, and are looking for solutions that work for you as a brand and as an advertiser. So I think it's on the one hand helping clients to scale, and on the other it's finding the best solution that fits to their needs. So I think it's both directions. So you have to be as an agency and as a consultant, you have to be ready for this, that you're able to consult clients in a very multidimensional way and responds to a even more fragmented marketplace, either if it's publishers being more fragmented, technology being more fragmented, so every sort of vendor and partner. And I think you have to be future-proof. You have to guide clients through that and help them, and you need the capabilities and experience to run that, which is definitely an advantage for bigger agency networks like the one you have on this panel. So
absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, Helen, go for it.
No, I was just going to sort of echo the point that Christian made about sort of consultative approach, and I think that it's, as the ecosystem gets more complicated, it's help, and as you say, be more of a consultant in that space, especially as they start to have some direct relationships and they build up their own capabilities as well. So I definitely agree with that. I was also going to add about people and expertise, and I think that's kind of what businesses are investing in. It's kind of as that agency role evolves. I think that's we're bringing in lots of people with lots of different very specialist expertise in different areas to support in that.
Yeah, great, brilliant. Well, a couple of final questions from me then, trying to sort of lighten the mood a little bit before we go. So I think it's fair to say that we've all had to learn to work in different ways this year. I certainly have. I didn't realise I would miss the hour-long commute on a packed train watching Netflix the way that I do. Didn't realise that gave me a very natural start and end of my day, actually, which meant I could put my laptop away at the right time. So I guess the question is there anything that has surprised you that you'll continue to do following these different times that we've had to work within? And maybe Helen, I could start with you.
I don't know if this should have been surprising, but I was certainly very impressed that overnight, or kind of an entire global organisation literally packed up, went home, and turned on the next morning, took an office from a massive office and put it into people's homes, and everything worked. And yeah, so I was definitely very impressed by that. I think personally, I never used to turn on my webcam, and I do all the time now, although I think I'm going to need to get better Wi-Fi because it does know as code. So I'll definitely continue to do that. Like you, I've also missed the commute, surprisingly. I've invented my own, so I've created my own sort of commute to the kitchen in the morning and tried to replicate. I think there have been some positives, so I hope we take those forward into hopefully a more normal year next year.
Great. Hannah, how about yourself?
Yeah, there was a point in early lockdown when my husband was furloughed and homeschooling my son, where someone said, "Do you need to leave the video call to go and sort that out?" And I was like, "No, it's just I'm just going to shut the door and speak louder." So that kind of I think everyone being very understanding, and quite often when you're at work, you sort of try and separate your home and your work life, don't you? But there's been no way we can do that, and everyone's been very sympathetic, and so that's not a surprising thing. I'm just glad that everyone's been sympathetic and allowed us all to be home workers, and rather than office workers, but in a different space. So
absolutely. Christian, any nuggets of magic that you've managed to develop over the last 6 months?
Well, the golden nuggets, not so sure, but I think that I was massively impressed by the proactivity and of the company and the people, the teams, and the proactivity. And I hope that we're able to keep this. And as Helen said, from one day to the other, it was like, okay, none of us ever has been in such a situation before. So I hope we all stay healthy. Yeah, I think that's most important, that we as a society and industry don't get hit again, and that we get over this, and that we keep the positive things that are there and that came out. So everyone came together, and then that was kind of positive spirit in a very negative environment. So I hope we're, as a society, keep that.
Yeah, I think they're fantastic words, Christian. I'd certainly agree with everything you just said there, and I certainly feel really good about working in this industry, despite some of the challenges we've all faced. So just to wrap up then, I guess that kind of classic broad question that nobody seems to be able to answer at the end of any panel that ever is asked. But given the year that 2020 has been so far, and I guess with no light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the pandemic, certainly here in the UK at the moment, if each of you had one ask for 2021, what would it be? And it could be work related, it could be personal, it could be around your favourite football team. What would be your one ask for next year if you could ask somebody to deliver against it?
I can go first. Mine was work related when I was thinking about it, but it seems a bit dull now. But I do want to go on holiday with my girlfriends. We were meant to be going away this year. We went away last year and we had to cancel. We went to Croatia. It was amazing. So 7 of us mothers are going away next year. So that's my 2021 wish, that we're allowed to go. But my other one was that adults people get let out more and get asked on panels more, because we know quite a lot about clients' businesses, and I think people are starting to realise that without us in the middle, then there's a few confusing points that are happening. So let your adults teams out of the cupboard. That's my second one. Sorry, I've had 2. Sorry.
Let the adults team out and then let them out on holiday all together at the same time.
Yeah, just do both.
How about yourself, Christian?
I just hope we get over this as soon as possible, and then that Facebook and Google and Amazon open up their inventory for everyone, including their data. That's also a second wish.
Yeah. Can we have a vaccine as our ask? That would be quite nice.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, I'd also like a holiday as well if we're giving out things.
I'll see what we can do, Integral. Look, guys, on a more serious note, just want to say thank you. Holding these kind of events via webcams and laptops is never ideal. But I want to say thank you on behalf of everybody at Integral, and I'm sure that the viewers that will be watching, getting insight in terms of how three of the big major agency groups are operating and working through difficult times, I think is invaluable to the clients, the publishers, and the other agencies that will be watching. And I just want to say thank you very much. So unless anybody's got anything else to say, I think we can call that a day, and I'll hopefully speak to you all soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.